A great guest in studio today to talk about the Grapeview School District and some things that are happening there, including an upcoming vote. Kurt Hilyard, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Great. Doing great.
You can find out more about Grapeview online at gsd54.org. Talk about all the great things they do in that Grapeview community. And you, just like most of the rest of the superintendents around our county and the rest of the state, it seems like, are asking voters in your school districts to look into and vote on a levy this upcoming February 11th. It is. It seems to be, like I just said, kind of almost a statewide thing.
I think I looked at it. There's 145 school districts out of 295 that are running levies this year. And I had somebody ask me, well, what about all the other school districts? They're in a different cycle. They might have run one last year, a 4-year, 2-year, 3-year last year, or the year before. So everybody's on different cycles. So
I think it's important too to highlight that in a way that it makes people more aware that this is not one particular school district who is perhaps not fiscally responsible or something like this. This is a statewide thing that's
correct.
Going
it's just depending on the year of who's running a levy that particular year.
So talk to us a little bit about the intricacies of the Grapeview levy here.
Well, we're asking for starting out with 88 cents per thousand on our levy. And that's quite a bit lower than a lot of the other school districts, but again, and we hope we're running an efficient school, so it makes it look like, wow, they're really efficient. But that's a little misleading in the fact I feel we're efficient, but our property values are much higher.
Sure.
And so that is misleading when you look at those numbers. Our taxpayers are paying a lot of money too. It's not that it looks like they're not, but they are, and we appreciate everything we receive from our taxpayers.
It is per $1,000 of your assessed home value, which
Correct.
Runs through the Mason County Assessor's Office.
Correct.
Do you have an idea of what the average home value is in the
I don't.
area?
I don't know that. No.
Especially looking at kind of on your sheet here, you make mention of the other districts around and kind of what they would perhaps bring in based on their levy rates.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing to see, and we had the Merriam Knight School Superintendent on earlier in the week on the closeness in the amount raised, but the difference in the levy amount there.
Correct.
It's pretty fascinating.
It is, and that's kind of where that McClary case came in, was that discrepancy.
Yeah.
And so, like Mary Knight will receive LEA funds where we don't.
Okay.
So that makes up the difference somewhat for those property poor areas, and that was the theory behind McClary.
What are some of the ways that this levy would help the educational process at Grapeview?
It's the term enrichment is what's used, and I really have a hard time with the word enrichment, although I understand why they say that. The prototypical school was set up in 1975 approximately, and it set up what the legislator felt what a basic education was per school. So for every 400 students, you were provided funding for X number of teachers, counselors, nurses, etc. Well, that prototypical school does not cover smaller school districts, for example. We have a nurse that comes one day a week. We're probably funded for maybe an hour for the whole week, and so we have to pick up the difference. And so the levy is an example of using the funds to pay for that. Enrichment, sports is an enrichment. That is not basic ed. That is also part of the levy, but we're a K-8, so that's not a huge portion of our levy. Technology is always, we have Chromebooks for all the students to use, so that, and those need to be recycled every few years, so that's a cost. We have a non-high. Since we're a K-8, we pay a non-high fee to North Mason and Shelton. Most of it goes to North Mason, and that's $130,000, $150,000 out of our levy. So, and that's a once-a-year fee. So, we have a terrific fine arts program. Lori is one of our teachers at the school that does the fine arts program, and that's paid for through the levy, and that involves art and music. And we put on plays. In fact, we had the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang musical this past week.
Oh, how was it?
It was excellent. I've been in high schools, K through 12 superintendent, for years. This is my 35th year as a superintendent, and it's difficult to do musicals in high schools, but to do it in a middle school is phenomenal. And she did such a wonderful job with the kids did a wonderful job. And so those are the kind of things that we like to see. That's part of our levy right there. That's a big part of our levy.
When it comes to some of the additional, when we've talked with other supers, they've kind of hinted at possibly adding additional staff. Is that where kind of a more full-time, if you will, nurse would be there, or counselors was a topic of another superintendent that was talking about things like that?
Right. We have a part-time counselor, does a great job. He's real part-time. It would be nice if we could have more time with counseling, just because there's more issues out there with students anymore than there were 20, 30 years ago. And so I would love to see if we couldn't expand that a little bit. But again, we have to look at a lot of issues. Maintenance and operation of the school. There's things that break and we need to fix. Our school is fairly new as far as remodel goes, so we have less issues than maybe some other schools. But you still have to fix things.
There's a lot of talk on social media about not just your levy or other school districts' levies around our county, but just kind of the levy process in general. When you come up with folks, or two folks, or they come to you and ask about the need for this, I thought the McClary was going to fully fund. That's what they kept saying. It's going to fully fund education. What are some of the things that how do you respond to that?
Well, it on paper, it fully funds because they said that a basic education was being provided for each school district. But again, it goes back to that prototypical school that was done in 1975. It really doesn't reflect what schools look like now compared to when I graduated a long time ago, and it's totally different.
Right.
And so, yes, it's fully funded, but really it is not.
Okay.
And those examples I gave you with counseling and nursing and those kind of things are a little misleading.
Sure.
What seems to be typical, I lost track with the other school districts in terms of the duration. Are they typically 4-year, or they could be anywhere 1 year?
1 to 4,
Yeah.
and it's all over the place. You'll see. I looked at that a few years ago. Anywhere from I didn't see many that were 1. I don't remember many at all. It was 2, 3, and 4, with most of them being 3 and 4 year.
I wonder if there's any research behind this. There must be somebody looking at this and seeing if there's a greater chance of success if it's spread out more, like if it's every 4 years versus people thinking it's coming up. If it's every 2 years, maybe they feel like it's every year and they're like, oh no, not this again. And I wonder if that creates some of the pushback.
That could, and it's nice that people can plan then over a 4-year period. The schools and the taxpayer, they have more time to see that through. Plus, it costs money to run an election, so every time you do it, that's another expense. So if you can do it once out of 4 instead of every year. So.
Sure.
And one thing, too, to remember is that the levy dollars that do come directly to the school district.
Yes, that's really important. That money does not go to Olympia. It stays here.
Okay. Very good. It is the ballots. Everybody should have their ballots.
Yep, I think it came out last week, I believe.
February 11th is the election day here, so have your ballots sent back in, postmarked by the 11th, or in one of the drop boxes around the area by 8 p.m. before they get locked here. Kurt Hilyard is in talking about the Grapeview School District levy, and more information again on the district as gsd54.org. Thanks for coming in and talking about this.
Thank you, and we really do want to thank our taxpayers. They've been so gracious over the years, and we don't want to take it for granted. They're wonderful. Thank you.